everybody? Today we're doing a tutorial on how to do the ARCANE shader with a little added displacement map. This is kind of optional, but if you wanted a actual ARCANE look, here you go. This is a direct copy of the Bean. I watched the Bean's video on how to basically do ARCANE's lighting, and he does all of this in compositing for the most part. And pretty much when he renders just this being the image texture. And then he renders what is essentially just, a diffuse BSDF run straight through with no bounce lighting or anything. For the most part, you would have to turn off bounce lighting. And then that way he can comp in his lights. However, I'm going to show you how to do this inside of Cycles. This also works in Eevee, as you can see, but I'm showcasing specifically my add-on CycloToon. Sorry, this is an ad, I guess. It's my add-on. Basically, we'll have access to all of these lights that we can then mix in. There's some reasons why this might be useful for people in Eevee, so we will talk about that when the time comes, but I'm basically going to teach you guys how to make what is essentially this little shader utilizing my add-on, which creates this minus this. To start, I'm going to just sort of remove this. We're gonna start from scratch for the sake of this tutorial, and it's really easy. Obviously, this does require my add-on CycloToon, which is basically shader to RGB, but for cycles, allowing you to create effects like toon shading, hard banded cell shading. You can create effects like Spider-Verse, which if you've looked at this channel, I have done a Spider-Verse effects tutorial as well using the add-on, and it's really cool. It builds out every light based on either a collection. It includes shadows. It includes everything that you pretty much need. Let me talk about what's in the scene. We have a head. This is a meta-human head that I made a while ago of a character named Sarah that you will see eventually. And then we have a collection filled with lights. I named these lights specifically based on their tasks for the ARCANE shader. We have the main light, which this main light is pure job at this point is to create shadows. This backlight is the rim light, which is another classic thing. And then this top light is for a special effect that I would actually recommend using a different technique. However, I wanted to showcase it here just to, add to it, I guess. So that'll be it. Anyways, first thing, delete this shit. We're going to add in a image texture. And this image texture is going to be my base color. Obviously, make sure you have a texture or a model that is textured. I cannot provide this model because it is for a bigger project that I am doing later in the year. So make sure you have a model that you want to play with that has painted textures essentially, so that way you can really nail that look in. But first, we're going to start with that. Next, what we need is I'm going to actually now use my add-on, because what we need to do is we want to make sure we get our lights in the scene. So let's use the collection mode. We don't need this right now, but in the collection mode, make sure include raycast shadow is on, so that way we can include self shadows, which is a new feature in the plugin. And we'll grab our lights and then build separate one light per group. Now, this is going to be a little gross because the raycast is in there, so let's just do a quick little cleanup to separate these better. So here we go. We have every single light. We have our main cast light, our rim light, and then our shadow decay light. Now, for the shadow decay light, the way that I did it, I did not use the raycast. I just used the basic light structure for this because this is a, again, unique effect that we'll talk about later. For now, let's set these up. First things first, let's crunch these values. We're gonna crunch this just a little bit and then do something like this. This way it creates a more cartoonish, hard shadow with a slight bit of softness, not too much, but that's what we need. Next, instead of this main shadow pass, what I actually want is this self shadow, which is a new feature. It's not really new, it's just taking the self hit and inverting the color. So this way, we get something like this. Now, for the sake of this video, self shadows kind of suck with using the raycast node, as what they'll do is they'll create these things called terminator lines. However, this is easily kind of avoidable when we have this sort of big group here, because if we didn't crush this black, what we would notice is that we would see all these like sharp edges, and this is just a problem that happens with toon shading. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna crush that black until basically we don't see it anymore, is kind of the best way that I can describe. You don't have to go that hard, honestly. But we're going to do something like that, and we're going to change that light size all the way down to maybe 0.01. 0.01 I think is good, because then we're introducing some blurring to it, because this essentially controls blurring, but mainly for cast shadows. However, we're starting to see polygons regardless of shade smooth being enabled, so I don't recommend using it if you care about cast or soft shadows, but we're just gonna keep that pretty small, and then we'll do something like this. It's pretty much in there, all nice and set up. Now let's worry about this rim light. This rim light, we're gonna do basically the same thing. I'm less worried about this, but we do want that self shadow for the foreground. We're gonna turn off the blurring. We don't need any of that. And then we're just gonna crunch this just a tiny bit and let this be a little smaller. Something like that is probably fine. All of this is in real time, so we can, oh, let me actually look at that light. That would be nice. We can move this around, and we get essentially what is just a black and white light mask, which is something that I've been needing for a while to do effects like this, but inside of cycles. Now, for the sake of this is not something I typically recommend. I've talked about this in my Spider-Verse video, but honestly, if you want to, you can group these. If you're satisfied with the lights, you could group these into a little thing. That is what I did over here. I grouped all of the lights together. As you can see, this is actually on a previous update before I had the self shadow, so that's why these map ranges exist. But we'll call this light masks, or we could say CycloToon, because that is the name of the add-on. Shameless plug. We'll come here, we'll output all of these as well, making sure that they all get there. And I want to name these things appropriately. Basically, this first light is going to be our main shadow, I'll call it. The second one is our rim light, so let's call it that, rim light. And then this last one is going to be called light decay. Again, this is not something that I would personally do in my own projects, but again, it's optional of a thing. And now we have this little nice group to keep things organized. Now, let's start the thing that you guys are here to see. We're going to start color correcting this image. Basically, the approach that the bean does is he'll take the original image texture and color correct it, to say the least. So to color correct it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this into a mixed color like so, and I'm going to just sort of tint it like this. This is really simple. We could do this and then just multiply it if we wanted to do it that way, and then you can kind of mess with the factor here. However, I sort of like this look. Do what you think is best. That's the way that I would see it. But this is going to be our shadow layer, and we're just going to do a slightly bluer look. Next, just to kind of keep things rolling, we're gonna do another one, but this time it's gonna be a much brighter blue, and this is going to be our rim light. So rim light and shadow. Now, to actually mix this with this, we need to just do one thing. We're gonna drop our shadow in the bottom layer, and then drop our color into the top. We are then going to grab our main shadow light and bring that over here. As you can see, the shadow's on the wrong side. This is sort of an easy fix. We can just add a map range at the end of this because it is our main shadow layer, which does make sense. However, I would probably have normally done this outside, is we'll set this to 1 and then to 0. Now we have a flipped sort of system. If you want to now sort of control the strength of that color, so it's not just a pure blue, I guess, we're going to drop another mixed color into here with this at the bottom, and then we're going to just shove our color in there, and then we'll do a little bit of organizing here. And what we're going to do is we're going to set it to multiply, and we're going to just sort of decrease this a pretty decent amount. I think 0.75 is actually a pretty decent value, depending on what you want. Also, because I hate it, I'm turning off the blur. I don't want the blur. It pisses me off. Just problems you gotta deal with when you do stylized looks. So now, we have this is going to be our shadow. Next, let's focus on our highlight pass. The highlight pass is very much the same setup. We're going to drop that at the bottom, grab the color over here. I like keeping my nodes clean, considering I could turn this into a node group later. Okay, and now what we're going to do is in that factor, we're going to drag in our rim light. Oop, let's do like that, and then we'll do that. It's gonna be hard. You know what? Let me do a little skip of just cleaning these out and rerouting, if you see what they're doing right now. Okay, sorry, that was bothering me. I like clean nodes to a certain degree, even though I can't really tell what's connected to what. But this is going to be our highlight. As you can see, it is mixed on. We can set this to something like screen to then sort of control that. You could probably play around with like a color ramp here or a map range to adjust sort of the effect here. However, what we're probably going to do is we're going to do a similar thing to this and drag this out, setting it to screen, and then we reverse that. So now we have something like this, where we can kind of color correct that base color to now give us a little bit more natural, which is a little different than what I initially had, but we can kind of add or remove that effect as we want. I'm going to set this to 0.75 just to be consistent, I guess. This is a little different than what I had, but this is going to be, or I was going to call it highlight, but it's just a rim light. Now, let's talk about that light decay. The light decay, if we look at his video, is basically this effect that he's doing right here, where he's creating little black masks that gradient, so that way he can kind of determine whether or not shadow, the color-corrected shadow pass gets revealed, or gets more revealed deeper in the image. I hope that makes sense, but that's generally the vibe. And the way that I sort of thought about doing this was in this stage. When we are mixing the shadow together, what we could potentially do is we could mix color the factor here with the light. I think we could just do this, honestly, and set it to multiply. So now we're getting something more like this, which reveals the shadow, I think, in like a little bit of like a worse way. We can kind of adjust the factor here. Also, yeah, this was something that I did reverse at one point, I forgot. So we are going to reverse this. We want this gradient to go down, and then that's going to create this. So there we go. That way, now when this light is over something, it will sort of remove that shadow layer and reveal underneath it. It's not adding any extra shine or anything, but it'll reveal our base texture more so. Now, what's really cool is these light masks are cool, but you could have added like 100 lights into this, mix them together the way that you want. You could have multiple main shadow lights, multiple main rim lights, multiple light decay systems in there. This is like, this gets complex based on what you plan to do. Right now I'm showing you probably the bare minimum based on the Beans video, but this is generally it. We have our main shadow, and then we have our highlight. Also, for the highlight, something that I forgot to say is that we are not plugging the base color in like this. What we are doing is we're going to be dragging this out a little bit and grabbing that shadow pass, bringing it over here. Now, giving us a more natural look with our shadow and our lights mixed in. Obviously, we can sort of control this, whether or not it has a color correction to it or not. Or we could use a mix and then just sort of slight color correct like that, which I think looks a little bit better for this case. But that is the effect. It's really cool. You know, I'm going to do my shameless plug again. Make sure to download CycloToon. If you want to turn this all into a node group now, we can select all of this. Hit Control G, and if you want access to those colors to adjust the color correction, bing bam boom, drag them out as you see fit. Maybe drag out those factors that adjust the color correction, and now you got yourself a little node group. And if you're going to spend more time than I am on a tutorial, you can make it a little cleaner with little drop downs and stuff, you know, make it as clean as you want. But yeah, this was how to sort of do the arcane effect. Very dependent on what you want to do with it. Again, this works in Eevee. I did want to discuss really quickly why this CycloToon in Eevee is also a good alternative, as much as it is a cycle-specific thing for why it exists. For one, let's take a look at a diffuse BSDF with a shader to RGB, the thing that I've been wanting for years in cycles, with a color ramp. Then let's just, you know, do a little bit of crunching for the sake of it. Okay, do you immediately see what's wrong? And if you don't, that's fine. The problem with a diffuse BSDF going straight into a shader RGB with color ramps is that it is not light aware. I cannot specify what light I want to use within the system. Unlike CycloToon, where I can get stuff like the main shadow, the rim light separate, like all of my lights are separate things within this shader. However, this system has all the lights combined. I have like no access to like changing these past that. So I think the fact that you get every light separated, essentially creating 3 separate shader to RGB nodes for each and every light source, is really cool, because then you can actually do effects like this more better. I don't think better is the right word. I don't know what the right word is. However, the one issue I will tell you with Eevee is that the raycast node shadow has like a weird view angle problem, which is just not a thing with cycles. It is baked in there, but that's because we are using this node underneath the hood when it comes to shadows. However, there's a bunch of math here to deal with blurring for cast shadows, because oh yeah, oh, you know what, I realize they're not really going to show up right now, and that's because we're using the self shadow input. But what if we did that? Wank, wank. Now we have cast shadows. Cast shadows are a thing included, so you can, you know, maybe add more to that shadow and block out areas that you don't want, which could be cool. I don't know for what, but you know, it's an option. Cool. That's the video. I'm done. I recorded this. I was trying to record this quick. I hope that was enough info. I will come back if there wasn't, and I will write little things on the screen if there was not. I hope you enjoyed. Go check out the Bean. He helped me a lot with suggestions for this plugin. He's the whole reason why AOV outputs are a thing, and why the lights are actually more accurate than they initially were going to be. So, yes, thank him in the comments. Shout out my guy. I'm talking too much. I gotta go.